couple of months ago, I completely changed my ad strategy to send traffic to Spotify. I started prioritizing countries like the United States, the UK, Ireland, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. Now, before this, I had been kind of aiming globally to target my ads. I was just trying to scoop up people from wherever I could get them to listen to my music. At the end of 2021, I decided to adjust things a little bit and start prioritizing growth in countries where English is the native language. Now, I've been running my ads this way for the past couple of months. So in today's video, we're going to pick apart the details of this experiment and see if it's been working. Now, if you're new here, my name's Tom, and on this channel, we talk about music marketing, branding, NFTs, and more. Everything we need to know to move from making music as a hobby to making music as a business. And today we're going to dig into some spreadsheet details. I know you guys love a good spreadsheet, and I know that you know that I love a good spreadsheet as well. Now, before we dig into it, this video is brought to you by Fanfare. Fanfare is a music NFT platform that is built for artists to connect with their fans. Fanfare allows you to mint NFTs of your songs directly on the platform, and you can even make music videos as well. You can add things on the other side of your NFTs like fan club access and discounts on merch, kind of anything you can think of to add value to your work and increase the likelihood of your fans enjoying what you do. So if you want to get started with Fanfare, go to fanfare.fm and start making your very own music NFTs. Now, before we dig into Uber nerd status and get into the spreadsheet, I want to take a look at Spotify for artists. Now, as I said in the intro of this video, for the last pretty much 2 months, I've been targeting much more heavily the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, and I have since added New Zealand and Ireland into the mix because those are the main English-speaking countries around the world. I've gotten myself to a place on Spotify where I'm at almost 10,000 followers, averaging above 10,000 monthly listeners for the most part, and my numbers have just sort of steadily been growing as I continue to put out music. So now that I've kind of proven to myself that ads work and that this does work and that this will get followers and streams and everything, now I want to start being a little bit more thoughtful about where I'm growing and why. So here in Spotify for Artists, this is kind of my global overview in the audience tab. If you've been in Spotify for Artists, this looks familiar to you. Right now, I'm averaging 11.4 thousand monthly listeners, 31,000 streams, and I'm at just above 9,500 followers, which is awesome. But as I said, I've really been concerned about growing in those top 6 countries. So the one I really want to look at the most is the United States because that's where I live and that's where I want to grow. Over the last 28 days, because that's the only window of time we can see here, I've had 1,200 listeners, 3,300 streams, and I'm up to 610 followers. And the cool thing about this is you can see this follower graph has continued to steadily go up over time, just as the main graph has for so long for me, kind of worldwide. If we break it out to that, we go to followers, and then we look at since 2015, you can see that this is kind of just continued to steadily go up because ads actually work. But if we go back to the United States, we'll take a look at some other numbers as well. First of all, I want to look at the listeners and the streams here, and I want to note this kind of like plateau and bump at the end here. In the last 28 days, things have kind of gone up and down a little bit in terms of listeners and associated streams, but because I just released a song this past Friday, the listenership has kind of gone up and remained steady a little bit. And then at the very end here, we've got a nice little bump. And what this is Discover Weekly. I got a pretty good Discover Weekly bump on 2 of my songs this past Monday, Hero and Lions. And as you can see here, a significant portion of that traffic came from the United States, which is very encouraging to me. That tells me that the listeners that I'm building in from the US from my ads are sticking around, and Spotify is recognizing that I'm getting more traffic from the United States. So when it does trigger the algorithm, it's throwing out that song to people in the US rather than people in countries like Russia, where I've traditionally had a lot of listeners in the past. I'm getting more traffic in the US from the algorithm specifically on Spotify because of the listeners that have been there in the first place. So here's my spreadsheet. How many times am I going to say that on this channel? Probably a lot more, so just buckle up. I started running this sort of style of advertising on December 24th, Christmas Eve of last year. And on January 5th, I recorded my Spotify data for the last 28 days so that I could have kind of a benchmark of how things had performed in the past compared to how they might perform in the future. So this top set of columns and data here is from January 5th back 28 days. So kind of half of it is this level, this kind of method of targeting. And the first half of it is when I was targeting just kind of globally and getting a lot of traffic from Russia and Turkey and Brazil and Mexico and the Ukraine, which is why they are listed here on the left side as well as on the bottom here. So on the left, we have the countries that I have been targeting kind of the most over the past 2 months. Obviously, the United States up top, UK, Canada, and Australia. I added in Ireland and New Zealand later, which is why they're not here on the board. They weren't in the original group of making this spreadsheet, so I didn't include them here. And then we also have Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Turkey, and the Ukraine. So in addition to targeting just these English-speaking countries, I also kept a second kind of tier of advertising to these other 5 countries where I had traditionally been getting listened to the most according to Spotify for Artists. But I just capped the budget on that to make sure that that ad set didn't take all the money of ad spend. And I made sure that enough of my ad spend, I think it was half, went to the English-speaking countries. So that's kind of why it split out like this. So in the top one, you can see that initially, I've got all this data here, and feel free to pause this video to pick apart this screen whenever you want to, kind of at your leisure, if you will. The things I kind of want to point out are, when I first started running this, the streams per listener for all of these English-speaking countries in column H here were not great. And the streams per listener for the other countries were significantly higher. So the way I've got it parsed out here is the average stream per listener globally was 2.964. And if it fell below that, it's in red. And if it was above that, it's in green. The new countries are less and the old countries are more. Kind of to be expected because I had a lot of built-in listenership. Another one is kind of saves per listener, just looking at listener behavior. Most of this data is built-in audience, not necessarily audience coming from the ads. So not a lot of saves coming from some of these English-speaking countries and more saves coming from the lower tier countries. Looking at followers specifically, you can see in the US, I had 460 followers. In the UK, I had 73 with an increase of 71 and 18 respectively. So now let's fast forward to now. This second table is from today, February 23rd, when I'm filming this video, back for the last 28 days. So this is essentially the second half of when I've been running this experiment. And so if we look at this data now, kind of going in reverse of what we just did, you can see that my followers have grown in the US from 460 to 610. I've had the exact same increase in followers over the last 28 days of 71. I'm now at 103 followers in the UK, and I had 20 followers over the last 28 days. So basically the growth has remained consistent. I'm getting about 20 followers a month from the UK, getting about 70 followers a month from the US. And you can see also that the percentage increase in followers is increased dramatically in these English-speaking countries because I've been targeting them more heavily, and it's dropped off a lot in the lower countries except for the Ukraine, which is holding strong. And then kind of lastly, you can see that the streams per listener have increased dramatically in the United States, which is really good. That means people are sticking around. And in Australia, still trying to catch up in the UK and Canada, but it is better than it was before by a pretty significant difference. And then also our saves per listener is much better in these English-speaking countries now than it was before. In the US, actually, it's exactly the same. So this method of advertising is working. I've been targeting these countries and it's paying off. Now, I've seen a significant slowdown in growth in other countries, but that's okay because that's kind of exactly why I did this. I realized that I was getting a lot of traction in countries where I don't live and that don't speak English as a first language, and I wanted to change that. This tells me that over the past 2 months, this method that I've been using actually is working. So targeting these countries for growth is a worthwhile effort, and the data supports that. So that's it for this video. Now, before I let you go, if you don't subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And at the end here, I got a couple more videos you can check out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.